got the call from JJ that he wanted to do a performance here. I said, okay, at Bailey's house. He said, yeah, about 30 friends will come over. We'll have an intimate evening. And yeah, we'll be at 60. And then I said, JJ, I usually send out some kind of, e-blast about the capabilities of the artist, etc. So finally, he sent me this 3-page history. So we had 60 people signed up. I sent out this email blast, and it went from 60 to 124. Oh my God! We have never had this many people here before. So I called security and told them they don't have to bother tonight because there's nobody on the road. So JJ is multi-talented, and I knew a little bit about his background when he played in New York City while he was a surgeon. But I had no ideas what the true capabilities, as I said in my letter. Had I known, I would have booked them a long time ago, especially the fact that it's free. Dr. John Kaiser.
JJ.
I always want to know what that stands for.
Because of you, I've got to change my whole spiel.
JJ actually stands for John.
John Jacob.
And then how about the emails of JJJJ?
Oh, I just learned what if you didn't get your hand off the early mistake. But with all of his commenting and stuff, this has turned into more like a biopic. Or a TED talk, but not really, it's just a tad. Anyway, John Jacob. I'm a junior. My dad was born in 1909 in Ancon, Panama, where my grandfather, L.G. Magellan, was running the weather operation building the Panama Canal. So my dad was named after John Jacob Astor, the richest fellow on earth at that time, who made it for 3 more years, till the Titanic went down. So anyway, you couldn't do this anywhere except at Spring Island. At least I couldn't. I mean, there's no reason I would. It's a special group of people here. We're a small community. It's a captive audience, concerts and that sort of thing. But it is such a special place, as you all know. There's a lot of creativity going on, a lot of getting together with friends and bridge. And talking about bridge, we started, you always count, so I thought, well, Annie and I have been together for 52 years. We're very fortunate to have found each other, at least I and then we've been on Spring Island. I looked at the numbers. We've been here since '92. That's 26 years. So I got out my iPhone, and I had to find on the icons that productivity is there. And then you look up the calculator, and I put in the 52 divided by 26. And I got 2, so we've been here twice as long on Spring Island than we've been married. But the point of this excursion was to go back to medical school for me, really, and that's when guitar started. I started the fiddle as a 5th grader on my own. My parents had some musical stuff, and they started hitting my hands when I was 5 years old on the piano. I said, forget it. But at 5th grade, I saw a gal playing the violin. And I said, violin, I think I'd like to do that. And I got hooked up with a wonderful teacher named Ellis Chasins, Russian immigrant family. His early job was a violinist in Atlantic City, playing in the orchestras with the silent movies. I didn't know, but they had full orchestra. All you've seen is the piano. So Ellis came down to Arlington, where I was growing up, and he was a furrier and teacher. He was concertmaster at Arlington Civic Center, and I started taking lessons with him. And through the years, he and another gal, Julia, were the students. She went on to play with the Philadelphia Philharmonic her whole career. And I was thinking, do I go to college or do I go to music school and stuff, and he said, well, you know, if you can do something other than being a musician, why don't you go and do that, because then you can love music your whole life. And I tell you, that's such a great thing for me, you know, because it's not, you don't have to be like a golf professional. You have to support your family and everything, playing the thing that you love, you know. So that's what I ended up doing, went to Princeton, started there in the orchestra, but the thing that captivated me was the Triangle Club, which is like the Hasty Pudding Club. We put on a Broadway show and travel 8 or 10 towns around the cities around the country at Christmas time. I worked up through violin the first year, then started playing bass because everybody was hanging out at the parties after the Triangle show, you know, Cincinnati, and it was this marvelous set of parties. You learn to drink bourbon. I had 32 one night. So I think they were watering them down. We were all underage, you know. Anyway, so that's where the bass started, and I started thinking, well, if I want to learn the bass, I better practice it. They had, I don't know, they used to have music minus 1 LPs, you know, and you'd have everything except the bass. So I just started teaching myself that, and then they had a concert, the Schaefer All-Star Jazz competition. So I said, well, I'll send something in. Well, lo and behold, I won it, which was pretty impressive to me because I said I didn't know anybody in jazz. I didn't what's going on. So that was the summer of '59, and it was basically the last jazz school at Lenox. It was the best one. I went up there on the train, just like when I went across country, and you know, Boy Scout, loved the train. Got off the train, they said, you've got to come down. That restaurant, or they need a bass player. So they carried the bass down there. And here's John Lewis, Max Roach, and Baggs playing, and they needed a bass player. So I started playing. About 2 hours later, we're doing all this stuff. Finally, I was getting bored, and I started doing something else on the bass, and Max Roach hit me on the back of the shoulder. He said, don't do that. So after that, we started, we had a group at Princeton, and here, I've got a picture here. You saw it online. In 1960, we went down to Bermuda and won the Bermuda Jazz Festival. The guys here, Phil Weinstein, we call him Wino, he's one of our best friends, went on to become the president of the Harvey Cushing Neurosurgical Society. He's one of the developers of ECIC, microsurgical revascularization of the brain, which didn't turn out to be that great later on. Richard knows me. We had Lee Adams here. I'm going to play. I have a recording that we made senior year. Yeah, I'll play it for you. He is a marvelous saxophone player, but he ended up, and he was also a stand-up comic, but he didn't want to. He didn't make it that way. He went in selling computers, and finally he started teaching in school, selling computers, and he never played sax again after that. Chuck Holt, trumpet, passed away a few years ago. Played in the Armory Band after that for a long time. And so let me see if I can make this iPhone work. the ads. He passed on September last year. He was grew up in Trenton. His father was a piano teacher, and he was like a boy genius on the instrument. And right out of high school, he went on tour with Charlie Ventura, and then went to Rutgers up the street, Phi Beta Kappa. In Italian studies, he could whistle any part of any opera and he knew it. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, here we are, Lino, the drummer, got all these gigs. We go to Europe and we play, this partly fits in with some of these folk people. The guy that had the clubs over there was McCarthy guys got him, and he was thrown out of, he was in the Hollywood business. He started jazz clubs in Frankfurt, Cologne, and Stuttgart. And so that's where we played. The best gig what summer was, we played 30 days straight from 9 to 3 a.m. And it was, at midnight, the Süddeutsche Rundfunkers, from the radio, when their radio quit, they'd all come. And it was because of Johnny Coates. 30 nights in a row they came. I remember Wilma Rudolph, and that was the summer that she was so successful. They would come to catch what Johnny had. He could go into a movie and come out and then write down the whole score of the movie. You know, but then, I mean, this is so, fortunate with Annie, fortunate with these kind of people. Here's John Simon here, who is the piano player down in Bermuda. He went on to produce Janis Joplin, the band, that Big Pink, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, all those things. He still plays at Ellenville with a band, and he just came out with this book. He hadn't asked me to do this, but I just finished it. it's his story, what it was like working with all those, the band. Levon Helm was just a wonderful, every guy has some special moment in this book from John Simon. You're welcome to borrow that. Well, so this is supposed to be folk songs and all, and I've got a list of things to do here. I thought I'd start off maybe with a glossary, because a lot of these songs have repetitive things repeated. The great big 44. You know, and I wasn't sure. You always know about the Colt 45, right? But what's the great big 44? She raised up that big shooting iron, fired 6 shots into him. The 44, the Winchester in 1873 came up with the great idea of the shot. It's a center fire 44 caliber bullet that fit the pistol and the Winchester rifle. So when you're out west, and the Winchester 1873 is the gun that won the West. So you're out there, you don't have to have a thing for this gun and this, you just got a big pile of center fire for that. There's one song has the hog and the dog. Goodbye to you, old hog. You have to ride the dog. Well, the hog, that's a name for a big old freight engine. And of course, you know what the dog is, right? Greyhound. The bus. Of course, boomers were the workers. Boomer was the guy that would go to wherever the work was. You know, you'd go from place to place. The railroad, in 1900, the biggest employer in the country was the railroad. And there are also all these train wrecks are happening because you got to be there on time. Well, the government at that time was spending about $3.5 million to the railroads to get the mail on time, and you were fined for every minute you were late. And so you really had to be there, or you're going to lose your job or whatever. So, one of the things talks about a red ball express or a red ball train. The things with perishables in it, or maybe ice cakes or stuff that needed to get there on time, where they put a red ball on the freight car to make sure that it was not a ball, you know, a big red circle on the, and so to make sure those cars got switched and got priority, so they didn't get lost sitting on the sidings. The Route 66 and Lincoln Highway and some. Lincoln Highway is the first highway across the country in 1912. Finally went from New York to Santa Monica. No, that's Route 66. From Chicago to Santa Monica. The 66 is 1926. So those are the first 2 cross-country highways. And then the town of Danville in Virginia comes up in a lot of songs. The Wreck of 97, Rough Road to Danville. Danville is just at the junction of the Piedmont, just the lowest, the southern part of Virginia. And on the rail line there became tobacco, and then after the Civil War and so forth, and they're still, with cotton, it's the Danville, what is the southern nose here, the biggest mill in the world for cotton. Danville, yeah. So that's, but from the 1890s up to the early 1900s, it became a really rough city with lots of gambling and that sort of thing. So that's, let's see what we can do here. Oh, I thought of a story of getting up on this. Here, there's a fellow. I'm running out the clock. The guy Jim Carrico was the first-year resident at Parkland on duty when the president was brought in, shot in the head. And he was the the resident on duty, so he took care of Kennedy right off, and he had got all the lines in and the tube and so forth, and a FBI or somebody came running in. He says he needs this. You know, he had steroids because he had Pott's disease and Addison's disease, so if you have a stressful thing like that, you need a little extra. And this guy is legendary there from then and on and through his whole career. He said, they're already in the bottle. Because he read about Kennedy and he knew he had these problems. And so of course, by then everybody got in there, and the chief of here and this and that, and they're all in that room. And so they put Jim over to the Governor Connolly. And so Jim and the nurse had got Connolly. And so Jim, he had to put a tube, chest tube, and an endotracheal tube, catheter, the IVs, and he finally gets them all the monitors up, and he told the governor, who obviously wouldn't hear him, says, "Okay, I've got you all saddled up. Let's see if I can ride you." So I'll saddle up here and see. It's been a while. Now, to warm up, I figured a way to warm up would be if we all sing a song that you all sang in camp, right? Ready? I've been working on the railroad all the live long days. I've been working on the railroad just to pass the time away. Can't hear the whistle blowing while it's early in the morning. Can't you hear the jumping? Dinah, blow your horn. Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah. Someone's in the kitchen, I know. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah. Strumming on the old banjo. That's what you call it, huh? Singing fee-fi, fiddly-I-O. Fee-fi, fiddly-I-O. Fee-fi, fiddly-I-O. Strumming on the old banjo. So that there was railroad was such a big part of American history. And of course, through the Depression, they became even a bigger part with all of the people that couldn't get anywhere except by jumping trains. There's a huge, huge library of these songs. Do these kind of things so I can get the fingers working. If they don't, they get jumpy. And is that the moon I see over there in the west, or just a headlight gleam? The C&O Express, I know she's gone. Whatever I say, it won't be long till I make up my mind and go away. Is that the sun coming up on the eastern shore, or just the coal bed glow behind the firebox door? I know she's gone, whatever I say, it won't be long till I make up my mind and go away. Do you see that fool? He can't hear the whistle. A blind old man caught out on a trestle. He can't go up and he can't go back. Train could come and washed him off the track. Oh, the storms may blow and the winds may rise. I long to go where the fast mail flies. I know she's gone, whatever I say, it won't be long till I can make up my mind and go. That? Wow. Yeah, you see? That's a good one to leave you hanging on. But this is that's a lament, you know. And as far as the metaphor goes, for anybody that's been blindsided by a lover or whatever, that's about as powerful a metaphor as I know. So, way out in Reno, Nevada, where the romance is the bloom and they fade, was a great Philadelphia lawyer in love with a Hollywood maid. Come, love, and we will ramble out where the lights are so bright. I'll win you a divorce from your husband, and we can get married tonight. Now Bill was a gun-toting cowboy with tongue noses, 10 notches on his gun, and all the folks around Reno left Wild Bill darling alone. One night as he was returning from riding the range in the cold, he thought of his pretty-eyed darling with a love as lasting as gold. As Bill drew near to her window, two shadows he saw on the shade. It was a big, great Philadelphia lawyer making love to his Hollywood maid. The night was as still as the desert, with the moon hanging high overhead. Bill listened a while at her window. He could hear every word that they said. Your face is so pretty and lovely, your form so rare and divine. Come go with me to Philadelphia and leave that wild cowboy behind. Well, the night back in old Pennsylvania, amongst all the beautiful pines, there's one less Philadelphia lawyer in all Philadelphia tonight. That's I mean, not out of tune, but that's a Woody Guthrie song. The first song was Utah Phillips. Utah Phillips. He was born in '35, and they did a lot of bumming around, and his Utah is the monikers for the bums was you'd like T Texas Tyler, and he became Utah Phillips. That makes me A Alaska Kaiser. She was born on an old Manassas alley. This is for the Pittsburghers. This is also one you can get your GPS out and follow it along. Her ma and her pa, they called her Sal. She grew up to be the pride of the valley, a typical Monongahela gal. She wandered one day by the river, and there was the Jason steaming by. Her heart gave a leap and a quiver as she caught the handsome pilot's broken eye. Now his name, you must know, was Moat Stanley, and he wore a fancy sporting coat. He was tall, dark, and handsome, and manly, the slickest pilot ever steered a boat. Roll on, Monongahela, roll on to the Ohio, roll on past Albuquerque, down to the Mississippi, clear to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, Moat gave a toot on his whistle, and the Jason chinned the water at her stern, and Sal, stepping lightly as a thistle, reached up and took Moat Stanley's hand in hers. It was love, careless love on the river. It was love, careless love by the shore. And I'm sure the good Lord will forgive her, for she never knew what love was like before. Moat swore that he always would love her, as they locked through the old Emsworth Dam. But that night overboard he did shove her, and then Moat Stanley took it on the lam. Well, no one would say Sal was sickly. She didn't even take time out to bawl. She hightailed it right down to Sewickley, slapping out a fast Australian crawl. She hopped a fast freight to Rochester, and there was a Jason close to shore, from a yard bull that tried to molest her. She up and stole a great big 44. She raised up that big shooting iron. She fired 6 shots into Moat, and then she laid down that revolver. She sure messed up that sporting course. Roll on, Monongahela, where the catfish and the carp left long ago. You used to be so pure, but now you're just a sewer, messing up the Gulf of Mexico. All the Pittsburgh people know that song. The guy that wrote his name, Bob Schmerz, and Schmerz in German is pain, you know. Some of the rhymes have a little Schmerz in them. But Schmerz was an architect, obviously brilliant fellow. He trained at Carnegie Institute of Tech, which is now Carnegie Mellon. He was a professor at there for years and years, and he wrote all these songs about, he was a banjo player, loved writing these songs about what went on around Pittsburgh. And this song is an actual story. She was tried and she was acquitted. I sell the morning paper, sure, my name is Jimmy Brown. Everybody knows that I'm the best one in this town. Never mind, sir, how I look, don't look at me and frown. I sell the morning paper, sir, my name is Jimmy Brown. You can hear me yelling morning stars, I run along the street. No hat upon my head, no shoes on my feet. Okay, that's from about 1880. That's a two-chord song. Have you heard of that ship called the Good Reuben Jane? They're hard-fighting men, both of honor and fame. She flew the stars and stripes of the land of the free, but tonight she's in her grave at the bottom of the sea. Tell me, what was the name? What was the name? Did you have a friend on the Good Reuben James? What was the name? What were the names of the men that went down on the Good Reuben James? There in the dark of that uncertain light, and we waited for the U-boats and we watched for the fight. Then a whine and a rock and a great explosion roared, and they laid that Reuben James on the cold ocean floor. Tell me, what was the name? What was the name? Did you have a friend on the Good Reuben James? What was the name? What were the names of the men that went down on the Good Reuben James? That's another Woody Guthrie song. This book here is the one that, if you're interested in this kind of thing, is a must-read. Woody and Cisco and Jim Longy went with them in World War II on these, volunteering with the Merchant Marines. Woody had a radio program, and these guys were all pro-union, anarchistic kind of thing, and then got labeled as communists, and he couldn't get into the Navy and stuff. But Cisco shipped out with the Merchant Marine, and this is all about what it's like going to the Union house and getting your job. And Cisco Houston had 4 ships torpedoed out from underneath him, and Woody had 2. The percentage of people in the military divisions, the highest death rate was in the Merchant Marine. The merman sprung and so forth. It was a horrible situation to be in. But these guys went, and here's a picture of Woody on one troop ship with 6,000 men. They'd go down and go from place to place and sing to them and keep going back even though they were being shot. This is that's the Reuben James. That's the first ship sunk in World War II in October 31st of 1941. Before we actually got in war, she was going convoy duty off of Iceland. And that's a classic 4-stacker destroyer. Pretty hard to camouflage that from a submarine. Railroad Bill, he never worked, and he never will. Ride, ride, ride. Railroad Bill, mighty bad man, shot the brake man right out of the brakeman's hand. Ride, ride, ride. Got a 44 pistol about as long as your arm. Gonna shoot anybody ever done me any harm. Ride a railroad bill. Got a 44 pistol on a 38 frame. How can I miss when I got dead aim? Ride, ride, ride. When I die, please bury me deep out at the end of old Chestnut Street. Put two cobblers at my head and my feet, and just tell them that I've gone to sleep. When I die, please bury me deep out at the end of old Chestnut Street, so I can hear that old number 9 as I roll on down the line. Jackrabbit country to the southeast Texas Gulf. There used to ride a brakeman double tough. He worked the town of La Mesa and Big Spring 12 miles down. And the travelers all said the little West Texas Reddy was the meanest bull around. If you rode by night or the broad daylight and the wintry wind of the sun, you could always see little West Texas Red just a sporting his smooth running gun. The tails got switched down the stems and manes, and everybody said that the meanest bull on them shiny irons was a little West Texas Red. It was on a cold and a wintry night. It was along about 9 or 10. A couple of boys on a hunt of a job. They stood in that blizzard-eye wind. Hungry and cold, they knocked on the doors of the working people around for a piece of meat and a carrot or spud just to boil the stew around. Well, West Texas Reddy come down the line and he swung off that old number 2. He kicked their bucket over a bush. He dumped out all of their stew. The travelers said, little West Texas Red, you better get your business straight, 'cause you're gonna ride your little black train just 1 year from today. Well, Reddy laughed and he climbed the line and he climbed on the side of a wheeler. The boys caught a tanker to Rising Star, then north to Amarillo. They got them a job of oil field work and they followed a pipeline down to Red. Took them lots of places before that year had rolled around. Then on a cold and a wintry night, they caught them a Gulf-bound train. They shivered and shook with the dough in their clothes to the Eastland Flats again. With their warm suits of clothes and their overcoats, they walked into a store. They paid the man for some meat and stuff, just to boil the stew once more. Ties they tracked to that cinder dump till they came to the same old spot where West Texas Red just 1 year ago had dumped their last pot. The smoke of their fire went higher and higher, and Red come down the line. He walked down to the jungle yard and came to the same old spot. And there was the same 2 men again around that same stew pot. Red went to his knees, hollered, please, don't pull your trigger on me. I did not get my business straight, but he did not get his say. A gun wheeled out of an overcoat and played that old one too. And Red was dead when the other 2 men sat down to eat their stew. That's it. Another Woody Guthrie song. He wrote thousands of songs, and This Land Is Your Land. He wrote that one because everybody was singing God Bless America, and he said we need a song written by an American.
That's a good point.
I saw her name on the side of a train somewhere a long time ago. I don't know who she was, but I gave my love to someone called Phoebe Snow. There's pictures right up there. The road of anthracite, they said that they used only hard coal, and so you could get off and your gown would be just as white as Phoebe Snow's. So there was a train that ran the Erie Lackawanna, DL&W from New York to Chicago. I climbed on board through the wide open door just as she started to roll. And I rode so light through the warm summer night in the arms of my own Phoebe Snow. Like a bird on the wing, I hear a voice sing as over the prairies I roll. But I'd give my life to spend one more night in the arms of my own Phoebe Snow. I spent many a night around a fire in a circle of stone silent men, and heard the sagebrush whistle and pop, and the coffee boil up in the can. And the bottoms were filled with the cool Russian River wind, the redwoods chasing the moon. And I knew without asking to take my guitar and play up some slow, gentle tune. Well, I played up a face that I used to know, and the sound of the song was her name. And I knew without looking that every man there was each of them thinking the same. I played up some hands so pale and small with a touch just as light as the rain. And I knew without looking that every man there was each of them feeling the same. And I played up the booze and the holes in the shoes of a man whose life is a cage. And all the things done to make a man run, the failures of age. And we'd stop with a crash, I'd look into the ash, helpless with longing and rage. Well, a traveler's life could be all right, a life without worry or care. You're always up and you're always out, and you're always going somewhere. And I tell you, my friend, not where you are, but your reason for being there. Then I awoke as the day broke and I gazed out over the plain, thinking that's how it's better off now being in love with a train. Like a bird on the wing, I hear a voice sing as over the prairies I roll. But I'd give my life to spend one more night in the arms of my own Phoebe Snow. Yeah. I've played a concert out of tune. I can it doesn't make the singing any easier.
Only you know.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. From the calm Pacific waters to the rough Atlantic shore, ever climbing hills and mountains like no others done before. She's as graceful as a comet, smoother than a waterfall. It's a western combination, it's a Wabash cannonball. There is music in her jingle, there is music in her roar. Like a will-o-wisp she travels on her way from shore to shore. May their greatness last forever, may the glory never fail of the Western combination of the Wabash Cannonball. To the 1880s, 1890s, the old Rock Island line. And the Wabash Cannonball carried a couple of verses that I sang right through all of it. With the hobos, the Wabash Cannonball got to be the train like when you're going to leave the earth and stuff. That was the one you're going to take. You know, it took on an extra meaning there. I was there when they opened the boxcar. Found him stone dead on the floor. Though bumming and running was all of our trade, no one had seen him before. He wore the face of a stranger, lost and unseen in a crowd. He looked so small as they carried him down, wrapped in a newspaper shroud. The wind blows cold in Wyoming, the stars shine clear and bright. If you don't wake up tomorrow at all, I guess it's old buddy good night. His hair was the color of a winter, all streaked with iron and cold, and all you could see in his soft prairie eyes was the wind and the grass and the snow. The backs of his hands were like road maps, the lines on his face were the same. And on his left arm a faded tattoo, a border, a rose, and a name. The wind blows cold in Wyoming, the stars shine clear and bright. If you don't wake up tomorrow at all, I guess it's old buddy good night. I don't know where he came from. His train was the UP freight. If there's someone waiting for him down below, he'll be a little bit late. So give him a line in your paper, and here's what I want you to say. There's some things worse than dying alone, and one of them's living that way. The wind blows cold in Wyoming, the stars shine clear and bright. If I don't wake up tomorrow at all, I guess it's old buddy good